Sweden is one of the wealthiest countries in Europe, and it was one of the most peaceful on the entire continent. You heard that right. Was in the past tense, because times have changed drastically. In recent years, Sweden has plummeted into a wave of violence with no equal. Since 2017, the number of shootings has exploded, and so have the attacks with explosives. These acts of brutality have put every authority in the nation on high alert. The Prime Minister of Sweden has even gone so far as to request military intervention. He sees no other option left to restore peace to his country. The cause of all this? Feuds between gangs, battles for territory, fights over where to sell their product, and these are not your typical gangs of grown men. No, these networks recruit adolescents, some as young as 13 years old. They are hired to carry out assassinations, to execute attacks with grenades. Children turned into killers. One man in particular casts a long shadow over what is currently happening in Sweden. He has become one of the most wanted men in the nation. This is the story of Rawa Majid, also known as the Kurdish Fox. Rawa Majid was born on the 12th of July 1986 in Iran. His parents were of Iraqi origin. They fled when the conflict between Iran and Iraq intensified. He was only a few months old, a baby. His family brought him to a city called Uppsala. Uppsala is a small city, about 70 kilometers from Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. His father slowly faded from the picture. He disappeared from the family landscape. But despite that, Rawa performed well in school. In secondary school, he excelled, especially in subjects related to business. He had a mind for commerce. After finishing his studies, he acquired his own kiosk in Uppsala. He sold food, phone cards, gold, a legitimate businessman. But his criminal career would not wait long to begin. In 2010, he was sentenced to 8 years and 6 months in prison. Multiple drug-related offenses. This included handling cocaine that he imported from the Netherlands. He was moving weight. In February of 2015, he was granted early parole. He walked out, and he immediately started a new business. He bought his own ice cream parlor in Uppsala. A smart move, it seemed, but not because of the customers. No, he used it to launder money. Rawa's freedom was short-lived. Barely 3 months after his release, he violated the terms of his parole. He was sent back to prison. In 2018, he was released again on conditional parole. Strict rules this time. He was not allowed to leave Sweden. But soon after serving his sentence, his cousin was murdered. And Rawa realized he could be next. That fear, that knowledge, it pushed him to seek permission to leave the country, even though he was under supervision and on parole. An agreement was made with his parole officers. He was allowed to travel to Iraq, the birthplace of his parents. He eventually registered in Suleymania, his mother's hometown in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. It must be said, from the moment of his release, Rawa had already resumed his criminal activities. He was trafficking drugs again. Even so, it wasn't until 2020 that he emerged publicly as Sweden's leading drug lord. This happened after the police managed to hack the encrypted message database he was using. Before this hack, the Swedish police had no idea how vast his influence truly was in the world of narcotics. They were blind to the scale of his empire. Currently, Rawa Majid is better known as the Kurdish Fox, the leader of the gang known as Foxtrot. It is said that the main members of this network are made up of Rawa's relatives and close friends he has known for years. In total, about 10 people, aged between 25 and 40. These core members can be identified by the rings and gold chains they wear, chains shaped like a fox. The Foxtrot network focuses primarily on bringing large shipments of drugs into Sweden. They then sell these shipments to other gangs who handle the retail distribution on the streets. They are also known for having absolutely no hesitation when it comes to using extreme violence. The PGP messages, that encrypted messaging service, revealed that at least since 2020, Majid had total control over the Foxtrot network and its operations. He was in charge of the couriers who transported the drugs, the foot soldiers, the ones who watched over the drug warehouses. The hacked messages led the Swedish police to intensify their investigation into Rawa. After a year of digging, they managed to locate him in Iraq. Together with the Iraqi police in November of 2021, they organized an operation. They raided the house where Rawa was supposed to be staying, but unfortunately for them, he had already fled. All they found were mobile phones. The Fox had vanished. Immediately, speculation began. It was believed that Rawa had the right contacts in Iraq, that someone warned him before the raid. that he was tipped off and moved. After that raid, Rawa relocated to Turkey. For a few months, everything around him remained calm, but in March of 2022, his name would surface again. This time, in connection with a dispute between his Foxtrot network and the Swedish chapter of the biker gang, Bandidos MC. What was the reason for the dispute? 2 large drug shipments that were seized by Swedish police on the 11th and 14th of February 2022. This conflict would have grave consequences. Barely 2 weeks after the seizure, the local Bandidos clubhouse was sprayed with bullets. A shooting attack. But this would be nothing compared to what was coming. The situation would escalate rapidly, with some actions that shocked the nation. Like on the 4th of March, an innocent barber was murdered. The man was driving his white Mercedes near the Bandidos clubhouse. A young man, just 17 years old, pulled up next to him. His name was Peter Hassan Hagi, and he opened fire. He riddled the car with bullets. The police later determined the victim was completely innocent. He had no connection to any gang. But they believed the attack was meant for a Bandidos member, one who also drove a white Mercedes, a case of mistaken identity, a life erased by accident. 2 weeks after that assassination, Rawa ordered his men to prepare for more actions against the Bandidos, and they obeyed. On the 28th of March, another attack took place, this time at a gym. The images of that assault were captured by the security cameras. In them, you can see a young man running towards the gym. He rushes down the stairs. It was obvious he had a mission. His target was a high-ranking Bandidos member who was also inside working out. The attack ended in tragedy. He murdered Frederick, another completely innocent man, a man with no part in the gang war. At that moment, the attacker was only 16 years old. While all this was happening, Rawa remained safe in Turkey, far from the bloodshed he ordered. However, he would soon face serious problems of his own. In April of 2022, a gardener named Ali Eren was working in a garden in Marmaris, Turkey. He found a bag, inside bundles of cash. The total value was over $12,000. Eren was honest. He handed it over to the police. They checked the security cameras and tracked down the owner, a man who identified himself as Miran Ottoman. When he came to the police station to collect the money, they scanned his ID. They detected it was a fake identity. It turned out he was a criminal with an Interpol warrant out for his arrest. It was none other than Rawa Majid. After a deeper investigation, Turkish police raided Rawa's villa. They found unlicensed weapons, huge sums of cash, luxury items. Despite all this, Rawa was released just a few weeks later. Why? Because he had purchased Turkish citizenship through the Golden Passport program. He had invested approximately $400,000 in real estate. Turkey has become a haven for some of the world's most wanted criminals, all because citizenship can be bought with large investments. Although Sweden and Interpol requested his extradition, the Turkish authorities refused. The reasons? First, he was already a Turkish citizen. And second, Sweden had previously refused to extradite people to Turkey, people that Erdogan identified as terrorists. The extradition of Rawa Majid became a political football, a bargaining chip. Meanwhile, back in Sweden, the Foxtrot network found itself entangled in another violent dispute, this time with the Dalen gang, led by Mikael Tenezos, a young man of 25 known as the Greek. Tenezos had gone from being a promising young hockey player to leading one of Sweden's most violent gangs. The conflict included battles for territorial control in Sundsvall and Umeå. This rivalry turned even more brutal, with children and teenagers acting as both executioners and victims. In January of 2023, an adolescent armed with a Kalashnikov fired 15 bullets into the home of the ex-girlfriend of the rapper Thrife. Thrife was believed to be associated with the Greek. That night, the rapper wasn't home. Only his ex-girlfriend and her baby were inside. Miraculously, no one was hurt. The images of what happened were recorded by the attackers themselves. They spread the video to provoke fear, to terrorize the Foxtrot network and its allies. On the 11th of September of that same year, the body of a missing 13-year-old boy was found. It is believed he was a victim of the gang war. Authorities have evidence that the child had ties to Foxtrot. This news was not an isolated incident. 2 months before this case, the remains of Laith al-Azawi and Mohammed Suleiman were found. They had been executed. They were only 14 years old. Swedish authorities believe the teenagers had resold some weapons that Foxtrot had left with them. When they couldn't return them, the gang leaders decided to execute them. A warning, an example. Children killing children over missing guns. On the 12th of September, just one day after the body of the 13-year-old was found, another murdered man appeared. He was killed in the stairwell of an apartment building. A relative of Rawa lived in that building. He was probably the real target. It was believed that this relative was involved in Foxtrot. He acted as an accountant, a money manager for the network. While Rawa's Foxtrot and the Dalen gang fought for control of Sundsvall, they also maintained a parallel battle for the market in Umeå, one of the fastest growing cities in Sweden. These cities became war zones, with shootings and explosions tearing through neighborhoods. For example, during 2023, according to Swedish authorities, there were a total of 363 shootings. 53 of them were fatal. But where do they get all these weapons? According to a report from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, the Foxtrot network, as well as other Swedish criminal gangs, are supplied by arms traffickers from the Balkans. Assault rifles, Serbian pistols, unused hand grenades from the Yugoslav era. The weapons are dismantled and sent by road along well-established drug trafficking routes into Scandinavia, often crossing the Öresund Bridge, a 16-kilometer bridge connecting Denmark to the Swedish city of Malmö. 1/3 of all handguns that arrive in Sweden are Serbian Zastava pistols. Most of the weapons are shipped to order. A Kalashnikov often comes with hand grenades as a kind of gift. A hand grenade bought separately would cost only 100 Swedish krona. That's about $9, or less than €9. These weapons and grenades end up in the hands of Rawa's young soldiers, and in the hands of his enemies. In addition to the various enemies Rawa has made among rival gangs, problems have also started to emerge from within Foxtrot itself. By the end of 2023, his group was no longer as united as before. A conflict arose that led to internal divisions. Ismail Abdo, once a close confidant of Rawa and considered his right-hand man, allegedly turned against him. According to police, this followed a failed drug operation in the summer of 2023. This explains, in large part, why family members have now become targets of the violence, because they have known each other for so long. The betrayal cuts deep. The split within Foxtrot supposedly led to a shooting in Istanbul on the 6th of September. CCTV images show 2 men arriving on a motorcycle. One gets off and fires several shots towards 5 people. Those 5 people returned fire, but no one was seriously injured. As immediate revenge for this shooting, the very next day, the 60-year-old mother of Ismail Abdo was murdered. Although we have already seen many unprecedented lows, this illustrates just how ruthless Rawa and his network had become. Not even someone's mother was safe. Only 4 days later, there was another shooting, this time targeting Rawa's mother-in-law. A man repeatedly knocked on her door. She did not open it. After a few minutes, the man shot into her apartment and fled. If she had opened that door, she would likely not have survived. Then, 2 days after that shooting, a man was killed. After a deeper investigation, it was determined that the man, Mogos Emanuel, had no connection to the conflict at all. He was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The real target was another relative of Rawa. The head of the Swedish police, Mats Baki, stated that the Foxtrot network disintegrated after its division. It no longer exists as it once did. Even so, the violence has not ended. New gangs have risen to fill the void. They fight over the slice of the pie that Foxtrot left behind. And Rawa Majid remains free, a fugitive from justice. According to the latest news, he may have left Turkey, facing the possibility of extradition to Sweden. It is believed he is now residing in Iran. There are also reports that Majid may have been detained in Iran. However, due to the country's secrecy, this cannot be confirmed 100%. There are also theories that Majid works for the Iranian secret services. Nothing is certain. On the 28th of September 2023, the Swedish Prime Minister, Ulf Kristersson, declared that he had summoned the head of the armed forces. He wanted to discuss how the military could assist the police in dealing with this unprecedented wave of violence. The country is at a critical point. Shootings and attacks happen almost daily. Involving the army in the fight against crime is extremely unusual. It underscores just how grave the problem in Sweden has become. Sweden has never seen anything like this before, Kristersson said in a televised address to the nation. No other country in Europe is seeing anything like this. Sweden, according to statistics, has become one of the most dangerous countries in Europe. Data from the Swedish police indicates that there are 4 gun homicides per million inhabitants each year. This figure is far higher than the European median of 1.6 homicides per million. For now, there seems to be no solution that can stop this escalating violence. How do you even begin to solve a crisis like this? How do you stop a spiral that tightens its grip with every passing day, pulling in younger and younger victims, turning them into both perpetrators and prey? The question hangs in the air, heavy with despair. It's not just about catching one man, even a man as influential as Rawa Majid. The Fox's shadow is long, but the network he helped spawn has taken on a life of its own. It has mutated. The violence has become decentralized, almost cellular. Small groups, often leaderless, driven by profit, revenge, or sheer survival, continue the fight. The original conflict between Foxtrot and Dalen has splintered into a dozen smaller, even more brutal feuds. The situation in Sweden has become a case study for criminologists across Europe. How did the poster child for social democracy, a nation synonymous with safety and equality, find itself here? Some point to a perfect storm of factors. A housing policy that created segregated, marginalized suburbs. A justice system that, for years, focused on rehabilitation over punishment, arguably failing to deter a new generation of ruthless criminals. The easy availability of weapons from the former Yugoslavia flooding in along ancient smuggling routes, and the exploitation of these conditions by men like Rawa Majid, who saw not communities but markets, who saw not children but disposable soldiers. The city of Uppsala, where Rawa once sold ice cream, now lives with the legacy of its most infamous son. The kiosk he first owned is long gone, probably replaced by something else, another anonymous storefront in another anonymous street. But the memory lingers. Locals will tell you, in hushed tones, about the changes they've witnessed, about the once safe parks where mothers no longer take their children after dark, about the quiet fear that has settled over certain neighborhoods. It's a far cry from the peaceful image Sweden once projected to the world. Rawa Majid's current status remains a murky, contested rumor. The reports from Iran are contradictory and impossible to verify. One day, a news outlet citing unnamed sources claims he was picked up by security forces, possibly to be used as a bargaining chip, or perhaps because his operations were becoming too brazen even for the Iranian system, which plays a complex double game with such criminal elements. The next day, another source, equally unnamed, dismisses the arrest as propaganda, insisting the Fox is still free, still moving, still controlling his empire from the shadows. He might be in Tehran, or in a safe house in the countryside, or he might have slipped across another border entirely. The ambiguity is his greatest shield. The Golden Passport program in Turkey remains a glaring issue. It highlights a global vulnerability. Nations, in their eagerness to attract foreign capital, can become unwitting safe havens for the world's most dangerous individuals. Rawa Majid is just one name on a long list of criminals, oligarchs, and fugitives who have bought their way to safety. For a few $100,000, a new identity, a new life, a new immunity can be purchased. It makes a mockery of international arrest warrants and cross-border police cooperation. It turns justice into a commodity. Meanwhile, in Sweden, the debate rages on. The Prime Minister's call for the military to assist the police was a watershed moment. It signaled a recognition that the situation is beyond the capacity of civilian law enforcement alone, but it also raises uncomfortable questions. What does it mean to have soldiers on the streets, even in a supporting role? Is this the new normal? Tanks and troops are for defending borders from foreign enemies, not for patrolling suburbs against homegrown gangs of teenagers. The response has been multi-pronged. Tougher sentencing laws are being rushed through Parliament. Police have been given more resources and greater surveillance powers. Social programs aimed at the most vulnerable communities are being desperately expanded, though many argue it's a case of too little, too late. There's a palpable sense of a nation scrambling to catch up with a problem that has spiraled out of control on their watch. The human cost is the most devastating part. Behind every statistic, every crime report, every news headline, there are families shattered. The mother of Ismail Abdo, killed in her own home as a message to her son. The innocent barber in his white Mercedes, shot dead by a 17-year-old who mistook him for a biker. The 13-year-old boy whose body was found, his life cut short in a dispute over guns he barely understood. Mogos Emanuel, simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Frederick, at the gym, just trying to stay healthy. They are not names on a police report, they were people, with dreams, with families, with futures that were stolen from them by a conflict they were never a part of. The young perpetrators are equally tragic in a different way. Children of 13, 14, 15, armed with military-grade weapons, carrying out hits for a few thousand kroner. They are recruited from the very communities they terrorize. They are promised money, status, belonging. They are given a Kalashnikov and told who to point it at. They are disposable. If they get caught, they go to juvenile detention. If they get killed, they are just another body. The real architects, the Rawa Majids of the world, sit safely in another country, ordering the violence like a business transaction. The case of the 14-year-olds, Laith Al-Azawi and Mohammed Suleiman, who were executed for losing weapons, is particularly chilling. It was a public execution, a message sent to every young soldier in the network: you are nothing, you are tools. If you fail, you will be broken. The brutality was calculated. It was designed to instill absolute fear and obedience. And it worked. The message echoed through the underworld, silencing any thought of defiance. The split between Rawa and Ismail Abdo introduced a new, even more volatile element to the conflict: personal betrayal. When alliances are forged in blood and crime, the break is never clean. It becomes a vendetta, and in a vendetta, anyone connected to either side becomes a target. The shooting in Istanbul, aimed at Abdo and his associates, was the opening salvo in this internal war. The murder of Abdo's mother the next day was the escalation. It crossed a line that even the gang wars had mostly respected. It proved that no one was untouchable, no family member was off limits. The violence became truly limitless. The attack on Rawa's mother-in-law just days later was the inevitable response. A life for a life, an eye for an eye. The cycle spins faster and faster, consuming everyone in its path. The police chief's statement that Foxtrot no longer exists as a unified entity is technically true, but practically meaningless. The pieces of Foxtrot are now warring factions, each more desperate and dangerous than the last. They fight over the remnants of the drug empire, over the same territories, the same customers. The name changes, but the bloodshed continues. The international dimension complicates everything. Rawa Majid's ability to move between Iraq, Turkey, and possibly Iran shows the limits of national law enforcement. He exploits borders, legal loopholes, and political tensions. Sweden can ask for extradition, but they cannot compel it. Turkey's refusal to hand him over, framed as a response to Sweden's own refusal to extradite individuals Ankara deems terrorists, is a classic example of realpolitik. Rawa Majid is not just a criminal, he is a pawn in a larger geopolitical game. His fate is tied to diplomatic negotiations between Stockholm and Ankara, to Sweden's troubled bid to join NATO, to the complex relationship between Turkey and its neighbors. The weapons continue to flow. The Balkan route is well-oiled and incredibly difficult to disrupt. The cheap grenades, the Serbian pistols, the Kalashnikovs, they are the currency of this war. As long as the demand exists, and as long as the supply lines remain open, the violence will have fuel. A hand grenade for €9. That's the price of a life in Sweden's new reality. You can buy more firepower for the cost of a pizza. It's a horrifying equation. The police are fighting an asymmetrical war. They are up against an enemy that is fluid, ruthless, and has no regard for human life. Raids are conducted, wiretaps are monitored, gangs are infiltrated. But for every cell that is dismantled, two more seem to appear. The sheer volume of shootings and bombings stretches resources to the breaking point. Officers are exhausted, communities are traumatized, trust in the institutions of the state is eroding. In the marginalized suburbs, the ones the Swedish media call utsatta områden, or vulnerable areas, a parallel society has emerged. Here the state's presence is weak. The police are seen as an occupying force, not a source of protection. The gang offers what the state cannot: money, respect, a sense of belonging. For a teenager with few prospects, the lure is powerful. Joining a gang can seem like the only path to survival, the only way to gain status in a world that has already written him off. The tragedy of Rawa Majid is that he is a product of this system, even as he exploits it. He was the child of refugees, a boy who excelled in school, a young man with a head for business. He could have been a legitimate success story, but somewhere along the way, the lure of easy money, the power of the illicit market, proved too strong. He chose the path of crime, and now his name is synonymous with the worst of what Sweden has become. The question posed earlier remains: how will this escalating spiral of violence be resolved? There are no easy answers. A purely punitive approach, locking up more young people, will only feed the cycle. It turns petty criminals into hardened gang members within the prison system. A purely social approach, focusing only on prevention and rehabilitation, takes too long. It doesn't address the immediate threat of the shootings happening tonight. Perhaps the answer lies in a combination of both: a short-term surge in police and military presence to create space for peace. Long-term, massive investment in the marginalized communities, education, jobs, housing, mental health services, a concerted effort to dismantle the parallel society and rebuild trust in the state. It would require a national consensus, a commitment of resources for decades, not just years. It would require Swedes to look honestly at the failures of their integration policies, at the unintended consequences of their well-intentioned systems. And it would require catching Rawa Majid, bringing the Fox to ground. His capture would be symbolic, a powerful statement that no one is beyond the reach of the law. But even that would not be enough. The network he built has grown beyond him. The violence is now self-sustaining. It has become embedded in the fabric of certain communities. It will take generations to fully eradicate. For now, Sweden holds its breath. Every night, families in certain neighborhoods go to sleep wondering if they will be woken by gunfire. Every day, police officers put on their vests and head into the unknown. The peaceful Nordic idyll has been shattered, and in its place is a stark, brutal reality. A reality shaped in no small part by the ambition and ruthlessness of one man. The Kurdish Fox, a fugitive, a kingpin, a ghost, and the violence follows wherever his shadow falls. The story of Rawa Majid is not just a story about crime, it is a story about failure. The failure of a system to integrate its newcomers, the failure of a society to protect its most vulnerable, the failure of international cooperation to stop a fugitive, and the failure of humanity when profit and power are placed above the lives of children. It is a cautionary tale, a warning to every nation that believes itself immune to the kind of lawlessness that has now taken root in Sweden. Because the conditions that created the Fox exist everywhere, the question is not if it could happen elsewhere. The question is, when it does, will they be ready? The ripple effects of this conflict extend far beyond the immediate casualties. Entire towns have been reshaped by fear. In places like Sundsvall and Umeå, the once quiet streets now echo with the memories of gunfire. Parents keep their children indoors. The nightly walks, the trips to the local park, the simple freedoms of Scandinavian life. They have been replaced by a creeping, pervasive anxiety. The gangs have not just claimed territories for drug sales, they have claimed the peace of mind of an entire population. The psychological toll is immense, and it is a wound that will take far longer to heal than any physical damage to buildings or infrastructure. Consider the case of the rapper Thrife. His connection to the Greek Mikael Tenesos placed a target on his back. But the bullets that pierced his ex-girlfriend's home were not aimed at him. They were aimed at his past, at a woman and a baby who represented a life he might have left behind. The message was clear. Your connections, past and present, make you vulnerable. This tactic of targeting family, ex-partners, and even children has become a hallmark of this new, more brutal phase of gang warfare. It's a strategy of total intimidation, designed to shatter any sense of safety, to show that no one is beyond reach. The footage of that attack, circulated online, was not just a threat to Thrife. It was a threat to anyone who might consider associating with a rival. It was a piece of psychological warfare streamed for public consumption. The case of the 13-year-old boy, whose body was found in September 2023, is perhaps the most heartbreaking symbol of this descent. The exact circumstances of his death remain shrouded in the secrecy of police investigations and the code of silence that grips these communities. But the belief that he had ties to Foxtrot, that he was somehow drawn into that orbit, speaks volumes. He was a child. He should have been worried about school, about friends, about video games. Instead, he was caught up in a world of adults, armed with Kalashnikovs and grenades, a world where a child's life is considered a legitimate price to pay in a turf war. His death was a line crossed, a threshold that, once passed, suggests there may be no returning. If a 13-year-old can be a target or a perpetrator, then the concept of innocence itself is under assault. The execution of the two 14-year-olds, Laith and Mohammed, for the crime of losing weapons adds another layer of horror. It reveals the internal logic of these organizations. They are not bound by any code of honor or even a twisted sense of loyalty. They are bound by profit and power. The boys were assets, and when those assets became liabilities, they were liquidated. The brutality of their deaths, executed, their bodies disposed of, was a lesson. It was a lesson taught to every other young foot soldier in the network. You are replaceable. Your life means nothing. Obey, or you will be erased. It is a form of control so absolute, so terrifying, that it effectively silences any potential dissent. The message was heard loud and clear across the underworld. The fallout from the Foxtrot split continues to generate new and unpredictable threats. The internal war between Rawa Majid and Ismail Abdo has created a vacuum of loyalty. Old friends are now mortal enemies. The intimate knowledge they have of each other's operations, their safe houses, their families, makes the conflict especially vicious. The attack on Rawa's mother-in-law was not a random act of violence. It was a targeted strike, a piece of intelligence gathered from years of close association. It proves that in this war, the most dangerous enemy is the one who knows you best. The police are struggling to keep up with the rapidly shifting alliances and enmities. Today's ally is tomorrow's assassination target. The ground is constantly shifting beneath their feet. The international manhunt for Rawa Majid continues, but it is hampered by the very real politic that shields him. Interpol notices are issued, diplomatic channels are strained, but as long as he remains in a country with which Sweden has tense relations, or one that values his investment dollars over its international obligations, he is effectively untouchable. The Golden Passport program in Turkey remains a gaping wound in the fabric of global justice. It's a system that openly sells citizenship and with it a degree of impunity. For a man like Rawa Majid, who has laundered millions through legitimate and illegitimate businesses, the cost of a Turkish passport was a trivial expense. It was an investment in his freedom, and so far it has paid off handsomely. The possibility that he is now in Iran adds another layer of complexity. Iran's relationship with the West is fraught with tension. Its internal security apparatus is opaque and often operates outside of international norms. If Rawa Majid is indeed there, and if the rumors of his connections to Iranian intelligence services hold any truth, then his protection is no longer just a matter of purchased citizenship. It is a matter of state policy. He could be a source of information, a potential asset, a pawn in a much larger game. His fate would then be tied to the whims of Tehran, not the warrants of Stockholm. The idea that a Swedish gang leader could become entangled in the intelligence operations of the Islamic Republic sounds like the plot of a thriller, but in the murky world of international crime and espionage, truth is often stranger than fiction. Back in Sweden, the societal debate has intensified. There are calls for a zero-tolerance approach, for military-style policing, for harsher penalties that would lock up young offenders for decades. There are also voices pleading for a return to the core values of the Swedish model: rehabilitation, social support, community building. The two sides often talk past each other, their arguments reflecting a deeper ideological divide. Those who favor a hard line point to the escalating statistics, the daily shootings, the utter failure of softer approaches to prevent the current crisis. Those who advocate for social investment argue that punitive measures alone will only create more criminals, more anger, more alienation, fueling the very cycle they seek to break. The truth, as always, is likely more complex. Sweden needs both. It needs the immediate, robust response to stop the bleeding. It needs the police and military presence to create safe spaces. But it also needs the long-term, generational investment to heal the wounds that made this violence possible. It needs to rebuild the trust that has been shattered between communities and the state. It needs to provide genuine opportunities for the children in the vulnerable areas, to offer them a future that is more attractive than the quick money and false status offered by the gangs. The story of Rawa Majid, the Kurdish Fox, is far from over. He remains a ghost, a legend, a symbol of everything that has gone wrong. His name is whispered in the suburbs of Uppsala and Stockholm, a mixture of fear and a strange, perverse respect. He built an empire on blood and cocaine. He corrupted a generation of youth. He exposed the weaknesses in Sweden's social fabric and the loopholes in international law. And he did it all from a distance, orchestrating chaos while he sipped coffee in a safe house thousands of miles away. The question of how to solve this escalating spiral of violence is one that haunts not just Sweden, but all of Europe. The conditions that created this crisis are not unique. Marginalized communities, easy access to weapons, sophisticated criminal networks exploiting global trade, and a generation of young people with few prospects. These are challenges faced by nations across the continent. Sweden has become a warning, a test case. The world is watching to see if it can pull itself back from the brink. The involvement of the military is a drastic step, a sign of desperation. It acknowledges that the police alone cannot handle the scale of the threat, but it also carries risks. Soldiers are trained for combat, not community policing. Their presence can feel like an occupation, further alienating the very communities the state needs to reach. The balance is delicate. Too much force, and you create more resentment. Too little, and the violence continues unabated. As the year draws to a close, the statistics paint a grim picture. The number of shootings, the number of dead, the number of children implicated in serious violence, all have reached record highs. The European median for gun homicides is 1.6 per million. Sweden's rate is more than double that. It is a statistical outlier, a dark anomaly on the map of a generally peaceful continent. The international press has taken notice. Headlines around the world now ask, what happened to Sweden? How did the land of ABBA and IKEA become the gangland of Europe? For the families of the victims, these statistics are not abstract numbers, they are the faces of their loved ones. The barber in his white Mercedes, Frederick at the gym, the 14-year-old boys executed in a field, the 13-year-old whose body was found. Mogosa Manuel, in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the mother of Ismail Abdo, killed in her own home. They are all part of a body count that continues to rise. Their names are read out in news reports, then often forgotten, replaced by the next tragedy, the next shooting, the next senseless death. The psychological impact on the first responders, the police officers, the paramedics, the firefighters, is also immense. They are on the front lines of this war. They see the aftermath. They pull the bodies from cars and apartments. They comfort the dying. They inform the families. They do this day after day, night after night. The toll on their mental health is severe, and the support systems available to them are often overstretched. They are the unseen victims, carrying the weight of the nation's trauma. The prison system is also buckling under the strain. As more and more young gang members are arrested and convicted, the facilities become overcrowded. And within the prisons, the gang wars continue. Alliances are formed, enemies are targeted. Violence spills over behind bars, creating a secondary crisis within the walls meant to contain it. The prison system, intended for rehabilitation and punishment, becomes a breeding ground for further radicalization and criminal networking. It is a vicious cycle that seems to have no end. Schools in affected areas have become frontline institutions. Teachers are not just educators, they are social workers, mediators, sometimes even protectors. They watch for signs of recruitment, for the telltale gold chains, or the subtle changes in behavior that indicate a student has been drawn into the gang orbit. They try to offer a safe haven, a space away from the pressures of the street, but they are fighting an uphill battle. The allure of the gang, with its promises of money and respect, is often more powerful than anything a classroom can offer. The role of social media cannot be overstated. It is the battlefield where reputation is built and destroyed. It is where threats are issued, where videos of attacks are shared, where the young soldiers taunt their rivals and glorify their violence. The footage of the attack on Threif's ex-girlfriend's home was not just for internal consumption. It was a public relations piece designed to enhance the reputation of the attackers and spread fear among their enemies. The digital world and the physical world have become intertwined, each fueling the other. The hunt for Rawa Majid continues, but it has taken on a symbolic dimension. Catching him would be a massive victory for Swedish law enforcement. It would show that even the most powerful, most protected criminals are not beyond reach. It would send a message to the young soldiers on the streets that the boss is not invincible, but even in captivity, his influence might persist. He could continue to run his operations from a prison cell using encrypted messages and loyal lieutenants. His capture would be a blow, but not necessarily a knockout punch. For now, Sweden remains in a state of suspended animation. The violence is unpredictable, erupting in different places at different times. No one feels entirely safe. The government continues to debate solutions, to pass new laws, to allocate new resources. But the problem is deep-rooted, and there are no quick fixes. The legacy of Rawa Majid and the Foxtrot network will be felt for generations. The children who have grown up in the shadow of this violence will carry its scars forever. And the question that hangs over everything is a simple, terrible one. What comes next? The Prime Minister's address to the nation was a moment of collective reckoning. When he said, "Sweden has never seen anything like this before," he was speaking a truth that every citizen felt in their bones. The country they thought they knew, the safe, stable, peaceful society they had taken for granted, was gone. In its place was something raw, frightening, and unfamiliar. The process of understanding how it happened and how to fix it has only just begun. It will require honesty, humility, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about integration, about inequality, about the failures of the past. It will be a long and painful journey, and there is no guarantee of a happy ending. The concept of the parallel society has moved from academic discussions into mainstream Swedish vocabulary. It describes the reality in neighborhoods like Rinkeby, Tensta, and Rosengård, areas where the unemployment rate is high, where Swedish is often the second language, and where the state's presence is most visibly represented by police raids rather than social workers or community centers. In these parallel societies, the gang's justice is often swifter and more certain than anything the official system can provide. If you have a dispute, you don't call the police. You call someone who knows someone in Foxtrot or Dalen or one of the splinter groups. They will resolve it. Their methods are brutal, but they are effective, and that effectiveness is a powerful advertisement for their brand of order. The recruitment of children is not a byproduct of this system, it is a feature. Children are ideal soldiers. They are impressionable, eager to prove themselves, and they face lighter penalties if caught. A 13-year-old might get a few years in juvenile detention for a murder that would put an adult away for life. They are also cheap. A few thousand kroner, a new phone, a sense of belonging. These are small prices to pay for a loyal killer. The gang leaders know that they are exploiting children, but they don't care. In their calculus, a child's life is simply another resource to be used and discarded. The story of Peter Hassan Hagi, the 17-year-old who killed the innocent barber, is a case study in this exploitation. He was a teenager, armed with a powerful weapon, sent on a mission to kill a man he likely didn't know, based on a mistake about a white Mercedes. He was a tool, a weapon with a heartbeat, and after the act, he became a liability. The gang that sent him would either protect him if he remained useful, or dispose of him if he became a threat. He was caught, of course. The police have him now, but the real architects of that murder, the ones who gave the order, the ones who supplied the gun, they are still out there. They are still recruiting. They are still sending children to do their killing. The 16-year-old who murdered Frederick at the gym is another face of this tragedy. He walked into that building with a single purpose: to eliminate a rival. He didn't care who else might be in the way. Frederick was just an obstacle. The coldness of that act, the calculated determination captured on the security cameras, is terrifying. It shows a complete dehumanization of the target and of anyone who might be near the target. This is not the heat-of-the-moment violence of a street fight. This is professional, contract killing carried out by a child. It is a skill that was taught, a mindset that was cultivated by the adults who sent him. The response from the political establishment has been a mixture of shock, outrage, and a desperate search for solutions. The center-right government, led by Ulf Kristersson, has staked its reputation on getting tough on crime. They have promised harsher sentences, expanded police powers, and the involvement of the military. But they also face the structural realities that decades of policy have created. You cannot simply arrest your way out of a problem this deep. You cannot deploy soldiers to fix a failure of integration. The military can provide a temporary deterrent, a show of force, but it cannot build trust. It cannot create jobs. It cannot heal the wounds of segregation. The opposition, primarily the Social Democrats and the Left Party, argue that the government's focus on punishment is misguided. They point to the cuts in social programs, the underfunding of schools in vulnerable areas, and the failure of housing policy as the root causes of the crisis. They call for massive reinvestment in communities, for a return to the social contract that once made Sweden a model of equality. But they too struggle to offer a compelling vision. The electorate is frightened. They want action now, not promises of long-term social engineering. The political discourse has become polarized, with each side talking past the other, while the violence continues unabated. The role of the internet and encrypted communications cannot be overstated in this crisis. The PGP servers that Rawa Majid used, the ones the police eventually hacked, were his command and control center. From a safe house in Turkey or Iran, he could issue orders to his lieutenants in Sweden, coordinate drug shipments from the Balkans, and arrange payments to his soldiers. The encryption gave him a shield of invisibility. It allowed him to run a multi-million-dollar criminal empire from a laptop. And when one server was compromised, there were others. The technology evolves faster than the authorities can keep up. It is an arms race, and for now, the criminals have the advantage. The seizure of the two large drug shipments in February 2022, which triggered the war with the bandidos, was a significant blow to Foxtrot's finances. But it was not a fatal one. The network is diversified. It has multiple revenue streams, multiple suppliers, multiple routes. The loss of two shipments is a setback, a cost of doing business. it is not a bankruptcy, and the response to that setback, the wave of violence that followed, was intended to send a message. Any interference with Foxtrot's operations will be met with overwhelming force. The Bandidos, a well-established international biker gang, were not intimidated. They responded in kind, and the conflict escalated, drawing in innocent bystanders, consuming the cities of Sundsvall and Umeå in a firestorm of retribution. The murder of the gardener Ali Eren's honesty in Turkey is a strange footnote in this story. He found a bag of money and did the right thing. He handed it in, and that simple act of decency led directly to the identification of Rawa Majid. If Eren had kept the money, if he had been less honest, the Turkish police might never have connected the fake ID to the Interpol warrant. The Kurdish Fox might have remained hidden for longer, but Eren's honesty pierced the veil. It led to the raid on the villa, to the discovery of weapons and cash, to the exposure of Rawa's presence in Turkey. And yet, even that was not enough. The golden passport, the political tensions between Turkey and Sweden, the complexities of international law, all of these factors combined to set him free again. The system failed despite one man's simple act of integrity. The contrast is stark. In Sweden, innocent people are dying because of gang violence. In Turkey, a gardener's honesty leads to a brief moment of justice, only to be overturned by the machinery of state policy. The world is not fair. Justice is not blind. It is influenced by money, by politics, by the whims of nations. Rawa Majid understands this. He exploits it. He is a master of the system's weaknesses, and as long as those weaknesses exist, he will remain free. The psychological profile of Rawa Majid is a subject of intense interest to criminologists. He is not a stereotypical gangster. He is intelligent, articulate, and business savvy. He built a legitimate business, the ice cream parlor, even as he used it for money laundering. He maintained close family ties, even as he ordered the murder of his rival's mother. He is capable of great charm and great brutality. This duality is what makes him so dangerous. He can inspire loyalty and fear in equal measure. He can navigate the worlds of legitimate commerce and organized crime with equal ease. He is a chameleon, adapting to his environment, exploiting every opportunity. The split with Ismail Abdo reveals another layer of his personality: paranoia and ruthlessness. When a trusted lieutenant becomes a threat, there is no room for negotiation, no possibility of reconciliation. The response must be absolute. The attempted hit in Istanbul and the subsequent murder of Abdo's mother show a man who will stop at nothing to eliminate a challenge to his authority. He does not see people as individuals, he sees them as assets or liabilities. Abdo became a liability. His mother became a tool to send a message. The human cost is irrelevant. Only power matters. This mindset is not unique to Rawa Majid. It is the mindset of the successful cartel leader, the mafia boss, the warlord. It is a product of the environment in which he operates, an environment where trust is a weakness and violence is the ultimate currency. He has internalized the logic of the criminal underworld so completely that he cannot see beyond it. He is a prisoner of his own success, trapped in a cycle of paranoia and violence from which there is no escape. Even if he evades capture for the rest of his life, he will never know peace. He will always be looking over his shoulder. He will always be waiting for the next betrayal, the next attack, the next rival to emerge from the shadows. The situation in Sweden has drawn international attention, and not the kind the country wants. Other European nations are watching closely, hoping to learn from Sweden's mistakes. They see the combination of factors: marginalized communities, easy access to weapons, sophisticated criminal networks, and they recognize the potential for a similar crisis in their own countries. The Swedish model, once admired for its social cohesion and equality, is now being studied for its failures. What went wrong? How did the integration policies of the 1990s and 2000s create the conditions for this violence? What can be done to prevent it from spreading? There are no simple answers, but one thing is clear. The crisis in Sweden is not just a law enforcement problem, it is a societal problem. It is a failure of politics, of economics, of culture. It is the result of decades of well-intentioned policies that had unintended consequences. It is the product of a globalized world where borders are porous, where weapons flow freely, where criminal networks operate across continents. And it is a warning to every nation that believes itself immune. The conditions that created Rawa Majid exist everywhere. The question is not whether another fox will emerge. The question is where and when. As the sun sets over Stockholm, the city glitters with the promise of a prosperous, modern nation. But in the shadows of its suburbs, a different reality unfolds. Children arm themselves for war. families huddle in fear, and the legacy of one man's ambition casts a long, dark shadow over them all. The Kurdish Fox may be far away, but his presence is felt in every corner of the country he left behind. His name is a curse, a symbol, a warning, and until he is brought to justice, until the networks he built are dismantled, until the communities he exploited are healed, the violence will continue. Sweden is at war, and the enemy is within. The call for military assistance is a historic step. It acknowledges that the civilian police force, no matter how well funded or well trained, cannot defeat an enemy that is embedded in the population. The gangs are not foreign invaders. They are sons and daughters of Sweden. They grew up in the same neighborhoods, attended the same schools, watched the same television shows. They are not an external threat. They are a product of the society they terrorize. And that makes the fight against them infinitely more complex. You cannot bomb a suburb into submission. You cannot defeat an idea with a bullet. The only way to win this war is to address the conditions that created it. And that is a task that will take generations. The first step is acknowledging the truth. Sweden has a problem. It is a deep, systemic, frightening problem. It cannot be wished away. It cannot be solved by slogans or sound bites. It requires a national conversation, a collective effort, a willingness to look in the mirror and see the flaws that have been ignored for too long. It requires humility, not hubris. It requires a recognition that the Swedish model, for all its virtues, has failed some of its citizens. And until those citizens are given a reason to believe in the system again, they will continue to turn to the gangs. They will continue to seek the belonging, the respect, the money that the state cannot provide. The story of Rawa Majid is a tragedy, not just for his victims, but for the country that produced him. He is a monster, but he is a monster of Sweden's own making. He exploited the weaknesses in the system, the gaps in the social fabric, the failures of integration. He saw an opportunity and he took it. He built an empire on the ruins of a dream. And now Sweden must confront the consequences. The question is no longer how to catch one man. The question is how to save a nation. The international community watches and waits. The outcome of Sweden's experiment in combating gang violence will be studied for years to come. If Sweden succeeds, it will offer a blueprint for other nations facing similar challenges. If it fails, it will serve as a cautionary tale, a warning of what happens when social cohesion breaks down, when inequality is ignored, when the bonds of community are allowed to fray. The stakes could not be higher. The future of a nation hangs in the balance, and in the shadows, the fox waits, watching, calculating, ready to exploit the next weakness, the next opportunity, the next tragedy. The mothers in these vulnerable suburbs have formed their own networks, their own quiet resistance. They gather in community centers, in apartment lobbies, in the modest kitchens of their homes. They share information. They watch each other's children. They try to intervene when they see a teenager drifting toward the gangs. They are the unsung heroes of this crisis, fighting a daily battle for the souls of their sons and daughters. But they are exhausted. They are outgunned. They are fighting against an enemy that offers their children what they cannot: money, status, a sense of purpose. The state talks about long-term solutions. The gangs offer immediate gratification. It is a battle the mothers are losing, one child at a time. The story of a young man named Amin, not his real name, is typical. He grew up in a suburb of Stockholm. His parents came from Lebanon, fleeing civil war. They worked hard, cleaning offices, driving taxis, sacrificing everything for their children. Amin did well in school. He was bright, athletic, popular. But he also felt the pull of the street. He saw the older boys in his neighborhood, the ones with the gold chains and the expensive cars. They had money. They had respect. They had girls. They answered to no one. When a recruiter for a local gang approached him, he was flattered. They made him feel important. They gave him a small job watching a stash house, reporting anyone who came too close. The pay was good, the work was easy, and it made him feel like he belonged to something bigger than himself. Within a year, Amin was carrying a weapon. Within 2 years, he had participated in a shooting. He was 15 years old. He is now serving time in a juvenile detention facility. His mother visits him every week. She cries, she prays, she asks him why. He doesn't have an answer. He only knows that the path he chose seemed inevitable at the time. It was the path of least resistance, the path that offered the most immediate reward. The long-term consequences, the risk of prison, the possibility of death. Those were abstract concepts, distant possibilities that never seemed real. Now they are his reality, and he is just one of hundreds, maybe thousands, of young men in Sweden who have walked the same path. The detention centers themselves have become a problem. They are overcrowded, understaffed, and increasingly violent. Young gang members are incarcerated together, reinforcing their criminal identities, forming new alliances, planning future operations. The system intended to rehabilitate them has become a finishing school for criminals. They emerge from detention more hardened, more connected, more dangerous than when they went in. The cycle continues. The violence perpetuates itself. The police know this. They see the same faces again and again. They arrest a teenager for a shooting, he serves a few years, and then he's back on the street, older, wiser in the ways of crime, and ready to resume his career. The system is a revolving door, and the gangs have learned to exploit it. They use minors because the penalties are lighter. They use them as shields, as pawns, as disposable assets. And when those minors become adults, they are promoted, given more responsibility, expected to recruit the next generation of children to take their place. It is a pyramid scheme built on blood. The international dimension of the arms trade is a crucial piece of this puzzle. The weapons that flood into Sweden come from the Balkans, from former Soviet bloc countries, from the vast arsenals left over from wars that ended decades ago. They are cheap, plentiful, and easy to transport. A single truck carrying furniture or food can hide dozens of rifles and pistols. The borders of Europe are open, designed for the free movement of goods and people. That same freedom is exploited by traffickers who move death as easily as they move timber or textiles. The grenades are particularly terrifying. They are small, easily concealed, and devastating. A hand grenade thrown into a crowded restaurant or apartment building can kill and maim dozens. They are used as intimidation weapons, as tools of terror. The fact that they can be bought for the equivalent of €9 is almost incomprehensible. It means that any gang, any individual with a few hundred krona can acquire a weapon of mass destruction, at least on a small scale. The normalization of grenade attacks is one of the most disturbing trends in Swedish crime. It shows a complete disregard for human life, a willingness to cause mass casualties for the sake of settling a score or sending a message. The response from the government has been to increase surveillance, to expand the powers of the police, to push for harsher sentences. But these measures, while necessary, are not sufficient. They treat the symptoms, not the disease. The disease is the alienation and marginalization of entire communities. It is the failure of the Swedish dream to include everyone. It is the reality that for too many young people, the only path to success is the one offered by the gangs. The case of Rawa Majid is a testament to this reality. He was not born a criminal. He was a child of refugees, a boy who did well in school, a young man with entrepreneurial instincts. But somewhere along the way, he made a choice. He chose the path of crime, and that choice, multiplied by thousands, has brought Sweden to its current crisis. The question is not whether Rawa Majid is guilty. He is. The question is whether Sweden shares some of the blame for creating the conditions in which his choice made sense. The political game surrounding his extradition continues to frustrate Swedish authorities. The refusal of Turkey to hand him over, justified by Sweden's previous refusal to extradite individuals Turkey considers terrorists, is a classic example of diplomatic stalemate. Rawa Majid is caught in the middle, using the tensions between nations as a shield. He is a fugitive, but he is also a pawn. His fate is tied to larger geopolitical forces that have nothing to do with his crimes. It is a bitter irony for the families of his victims, who see justice delayed and denied by the machinations of international politics. The possibility that he is now in Iran adds another layer of complexity. Iran is a nation with which Sweden has limited diplomatic engagement. The relationship is strained by Iran's nuclear program, its support for militant groups in the Middle East, and its human rights record. If Rawa Majid is indeed in Iran, and if he has any connection to Iranian intelligence, his capture becomes even more unlikely. He would be a protected asset, a source of potential value to a regime that sees the West as an enemy. The chances of extradition from Iran are close to zero, and so the Fox remains free. He continues to elude the international manhunt, to mock the efforts of law enforcement, to symbolize the impotence of justice in the face of money and politics. His story is not over. There will be more chapters, more twists, more revelations. But for now, he is a ghost, a legend, a name whispered in the underworld and shouted in the headlines. In Sweden, the violence continues. The shootings, the bombings, the murders, they have become almost routine. The news reports them with a weary familiarity. Another night, another attack, another body. The public has become desensitized, numbed by the constant stream of tragedy. But for the families directly affected, each death is a fresh wound, a loss that can never be healed. They are the ones who bear the true cost of this crisis. They are the ones who will carry the pain forever. The mother of the 13-year-old boy whose body was found in September 2023 will never recover. She will spend the rest of her life wondering what she could have done differently, how she could have saved her son from the fate that claimed him. She will visit his grave, if there is a grave, and she will talk to him, and she will weep. Her pain is immeasurable, and she is just one of many. The father of the 14-year-old boy executed for losing weapons will never know justice. The killers are still out there, protected by the code of silence, by the fear that grips the community. He will never see them brought to account. He will never hear them explain why they took his son's life. He will live with the rage and the grief forever, a hollow shell of the man he once was. These are the human costs of the gang wars. These are the faces behind the statistics, and they are the reason why the fight against Rawa Majid and his ilk is so important. It is not just about catching one criminal, it is about restoring a sense of justice, of safety, of humanity to a society that has lost its way. The military involvement, when it comes, will be a visible sign that the state is finally taking the threat seriously. But it will also be a sign of failure. It will mean that civilian institutions, the police, the social services, the schools, have been unable to contain the crisis. It will mean that Sweden has reached a point of last resort. The soldiers will patrol the streets, and they will provide a temporary deterrent. But they cannot fix the underlying problems. Only society can do that. The debate over how to fix those problems will continue for years. There will be commissions, reports, white papers, there will be political arguments, policy proposals, election campaigns. The crisis will be analyzed from every angle, dissected by experts, debated by pundits. But in the end, the solutions will require more than analysis. They will require action. They will require investment. They will require a willingness to make difficult choices, to allocate resources, to challenge entrenched interests. The most important investment is in children. The children growing up in the vulnerable suburbs need to see a future for themselves that does not involve gangs. They need schools that inspire them, teachers who believe in them, communities that support them. They need jobs, opportunities, a reason to hope. Without hope, they will continue to turn to the gangs. Without hope, the cycle will continue. The story of Rawa Majid is a story of hope denied. He was a child with potential, a boy who could have been anything. But the circumstances of his life, the choices he made, the environment that shaped him, all conspired to turn him into what he became. He is not an excuse. He is responsible for his crimes, but he is also a product of his environment, and that environment is one that Sweden, as a society, helped create. The question now is whether Sweden can learn from its mistakes, whether it can rebuild the social contract, restore the trust that has been broken, and create a future where no child feels the need to join a gang. It is a monumental task. It will take generations, but it is the only path forward. The alternative is more violence, more death, more tragedy. The alternative is a Sweden that has permanently lost its way. As the world watches, Sweden faces its moment of truth. The peaceful Nordic nation, the model of social democracy, the land of the midnight sun, is at war with itself. The enemy is not foreign, it is homegrown, and the outcome of this war will determine the country's future for decades to come. The fox may still be free, but the battle is not over. The fight for Sweden's soul has just begun. The story of Rawa Majid, the Kurdish Fox, is not a closed chapter. It is a living, breathing narrative that continues to unfold with each passing day. His name echoes through courtrooms, police briefings, and the hushed conversations of those who live in the shadows he helped create. He has become a symbol, a boogeyman, a figure of almost mythical proportions. But beneath the myth is a man who made choices, a man who chose violence over peace, profit over people, power over humanity. And that man, wherever he is, still casts a long shadow over the country he left behind. The investigation into his network continues. Police forces across Europe share intelligence, coordinate operations, and pursue leads. The hack of the encrypted PGP servers was a major breakthrough, but it was not the end. There are always new servers, new encryption methods, new ways to hide. The cat and mouse game between law enforcement and criminals is eternal. And Rawa Majid, with his resources and his connections, is a master of evasion. He has survived raids, arrests, and assassination attempts. He has outsmarted Interpol and defied extradition. He is a formidable adversary, and the authorities know it. But they also know that no one evades justice forever. Eventually, everyone makes a mistake. Eventually, luck runs out. The question is when, and where, and under what circumstances. Will Rawa Majid be captured in a dramatic raid, dragged from a safe house in Tehran or Istanbul? Will he be betrayed by a trusted lieutenant, someone who sees a chance to save themselves by selling out the boss? Will he die in a hail of bullets, killed by a rival or by security forces? Or will he simply vanish, disappearing into the ether, becoming a ghost whose fate is never known? These are the possibilities. These are the endings that could be written for the Kurdish Fox. For the families of his victims, the ending cannot come soon enough. They have waited years for justice. They have watched as Rawa Majid lived in luxury, protected by the very systems that were supposed to bring him to account. They have seen his name in the headlines, his face on the news, his story told and retold. They have endured the pain of knowing that the man who ordered the deaths of their loved ones is still free, still breathing, still enjoying the fruits of his crimes. Their grief is compounded by frustration, by anger, by a sense of helplessness. They want closure. They want to see him brought to justice. They want to know that the system works, that the law matters, that their loved ones' lives were not taken in vain. The mother of the innocent barber, the man in the white Mercedes, will never get her son back, but she might one day see his killer brought to account. She might see Peter Hassan Hagi, the 17-year-old who pulled the trigger, spend decades in prison. She might see the leaders who ordered the hit, if they are ever caught, face the consequences of their actions. That would not bring her son back, but it would be something. It would be a small measure of justice in an unjust world. The widow of Frederick, the man murdered at the gym, will raise their children alone. She will tell them about their father, about the man who was taken from them by a 16-year-old with a gun. She will try to explain the inexplicable, to make sense of the senseless. She will live with the hole in her heart forever. And she will wait, like so many others, for the day when the Kurdish Fox is finally brought to ground. The parents of the 14-year-old boys, Laith and Mohammed, who were executed for losing weapons, will never know peace. Their sons were taken from them in the most brutal way imaginable, killed by the very organization they trusted. The betrayal is absolute. The pain is infinite. They will carry it for the rest of their lives. And they will hope, against all hope, that someday, somehow, the men who ordered the execution will face justice. These are the human stakes of the manhunt. These are the reasons why catching Rawa Majid matters. It is not just about closing a case. It is about restoring faith in the idea that justice is possible. It is about showing the victims' families that their loved ones' lives had value. It is about sending a message to every gang member, every criminal, every would-be kingpin that no one is above the law. It is about reclaiming the moral high ground for a society that has lost its way. The political dimension of the case adds a layer of frustration. The refusal of Turkey to extradite Rawa Majid, justified by Sweden's refusal to extradite individuals Ankara deems terrorists, is a classic example of diplomatic gridlock. The lives of victims are caught in the gears of international politics. The families are left waiting while nations posture and negotiate. It is a cruel irony that a man like Rawa Majid, who has no loyalty to any country, no allegiance to any cause, can exploit the tensions between nations to protect himself. He is a parasite, feeding on the conflicts of others. The possibility that he is now in Iran is even more troubling. Iran is a nation with which Sweden has limited diplomatic leverage. The relationship is strained by a host of issues, from human rights to nuclear proliferation. If Rawa Majid is indeed in Iran, and if he has any connection to the Iranian security services, his capture becomes a geopolitical impossibility. He would be a protected asset, a potential source of intelligence, a pawn in a larger game. The chances of extradition would be zero. He would be free to live out his days in the Islamic Republic, far from the reach of Swedish justice. And yet, even in Iran, he would not be safe. The tentacles of the international criminal underworld reach far. Rivals could find him. Assassins could be dispatched. The fox could become the hunted, even in his place of refuge. The life of a fugitive is never secure. There is always someone looking for you, always a threat around the corner. Rawa Majid may have money, connections, and protection, but he also has enemies, and enemies have long memories. The internal conflict within Foxtrot has created a new set of threats. Ismail Abdo, once his right-hand man, is now his mortal enemy. The war between them has already claimed lives, including Abdo's own mother. It will not end until one of them is dead or in prison. Abdo knows Rawa's methods, his habits, his weaknesses. He is a dangerous opponent, and he is just one of many former allies who now have reason to want the Fox dead. The network Rawa built is crumbling, and the pieces are turning on each other. The violence is becoming more diffuse, more unpredictable, more personal. In Sweden, the situation remains critical. The shootings continue, the bombings continue, the deaths continue. The government's call for military assistance is a recognition that the police cannot handle the crisis alone. But the military is a blunt instrument. It is not designed for community policing. Its presence could easily escalate tensions, turning already marginalized communities into occupied zones. The balance is delicate. The stakes are high. The long-term solutions are clear, even if they are difficult to implement. Investment in education, in jobs, in housing, in social services. A renewed focus on integration, on building bridges between communities, on creating opportunities for those who have been left behind. A criminal justice system that is both tough and fair, that punishes the guilty while offering hope to the redeemable. These are the pillars of a sustainable solution, but they take time, and time is a luxury Sweden does not have. The children growing up in the vulnerable suburbs cannot wait. They need hope now. They need to see a future for themselves that does not involve gangs and violence. They need mentors, role models, opportunities. They need to believe that the system is on their side, that the state cares about them, that their lives matter. Without that belief, they will continue to be recruited. They will continue to become soldiers in a war they do not understand, and the cycle will continue. The story of Rawa Majid is a cautionary tale. It is a story about what happens when a society fails its most vulnerable members. It is a story about the consequences of inequality, of segregation, of neglect. It is a story about the choices individuals make and the environments that shape those choices. And it is a story that is still being written. How will it end? Will Rawa Majid be captured and brought to justice? Will he die in a foreign land, killed by rivals or by security forces? Will he simply disappear, becoming a legend, a ghost, a name whispered in the underworld forever? The ending is not yet written. The fox is still running, and the hunters are still hunting. For now, Sweden must focus on the task at hand. It must contain the violence. It must protect its citizens. It must rebuild the trust that has been shattered. It must invest in the future. And it must never forget the lessons of the past. The story of Rawa Majid is a story of failure, but it is also a story of resilience. The families of the victims continue to fight for justice. The police continue to pursue the criminals. The communities continue to resist the gangs. There is hope, even in the darkest moments. The question posed at the beginning remains: how will this escalating spiral of violence be resolved? The answer is not simple. It will require a combination of tough policing and social investment. It will require political will and public support. It will require time and patience. But it is possible. Sweden has overcome challenges before. It can overcome this one. The story of Rawa Majid is not just a Swedish story. It is a global story. It is a story about the challenges facing every modern society. Inequality, migration, organized crime, the failure of integration. It is a story that resonates far beyond the borders of Scandinavia. And it is a story that will be studied for years to come by criminologists, by sociologists, by policymakers, by anyone who wants to understand the dark side of the human experience. As for Rawa Majid himself, his fate is uncertain. He may be in Iran, he may be in Turkey, he may be somewhere else entirely. He may be alive, he may be dead. The rumors are contradictory, the facts are elusive. The fox remains a ghost, but one thing is certain: his legacy will live on, in the families he shattered, in the communities he terrorized, in the children he corrupted, in the nation he helped to destabilize. The Kurdish Fox has left an indelible mark on Sweden, and that mark will not soon be erased. The sun will rise tomorrow over Stockholm. The city will go about its business. People will go to work, to school, to the park. Life will continue, but in the shadows, the violence will continue too. The gangs will fight, the bombs will explode, the bodies will fall, and the fox, wherever he is, will watch. He will watch the chaos he helped create. He will watch the suffering he caused, and he will feel nothing, because that is the nature of the beast. The story is not over. It will never be over. Not until justice is done. Not until the families find peace. Not until the children are safe. Not until Sweden reclaims its soul. That is the task ahead. That is the fight. And it is a fight that must be won. How do you think this escalating spiral of violence will be resolved? Do you believe that capturing Rawa Majid will make a difference? Or is the problem too deep, too systemic, for any one arrest to matter? Would you like to know more about the other gangs fighting for control in Sweden? About the young soldiers who carry out the hits? About the families left behind? Or perhaps there is another country, another criminal, another story you want us to explore. The world of organized crime is vast, and the stories are endless. Let us know what you think. The conversation continues. Sweden was once a beacon, a light in the cold north, a country that promised safety, stability, and opportunity for all who came to its shores. That promise for many has been broken. The story of Rawa Majid is not just the story of one man's rise and fall. It is the story of a nation's awakening to a nightmare it never imagined it would face. The peaceful streets, the quiet forests, the orderly cities, they have all been touched by the violence that the Fox unleashed. Think back to the beginning. A baby, only months old, carried in the arms of parents fleeing war. They came to Sweden seeking safety. They found it. They built a life. Their son went to school, excelled in business, opened a kiosk. He was the embodiment of the immigrant dream, but somewhere along the way, that dream curdled. The legitimate businessman became a drug trafficker. The drug trafficker became a kingpin. The kingpin became a fugitive. And the fugitive became a ghost, haunting the country that gave his family refuge. The transformation is almost incomprehensible. How does a child who had every opportunity become one of the most wanted criminals in Europe? How does a nation that prided itself on equality and integration become a battleground for gang warfare? The answers are complex, uncomfortable, and deeply rooted in the failures of the very systems that were supposed to prevent such outcomes. The schools in the vulnerable suburbs are underfunded and overwhelmed. Teachers struggle to maintain order, let alone inspire learning. The job market is unforgiving to those without connections, without the right accents, without the right names. The housing policies of the past have created segregated communities, islands of poverty and alienation in a sea of prosperity. And into this void step, the gangs. They offer what the state cannot: money, respect, belonging. They offer a twisted version of the dream that brought their parents to Sweden in the first place. Rawa Majid understood this. He exploited it. He built his empire on the desperation of the disenfranchised, on the ambitions of the young, on the fear of the vulnerable. He was a predator, and Sweden was his hunting ground. The irony is bitter. The country that gave him safety became the country he terrorized. The dream became a nightmare. The violence he unleashed has reshaped the nation. The statistics are staggering, but they do not capture the full horror. They do not capture the sound of gunfire echoing through a quiet neighborhood. They do not capture the screams of a mother finding her child dead. They do not capture the emptiness in the eyes of a father who has lost everything. The human cost is beyond measure. And yet, even in the midst of this darkness, there are glimmers of light. The mothers who organize to protect their children. The teachers who stay late to mentor at-risk students. The police officers who risk their lives every day to keep the peace. The community leaders who refuse to give up on their neighborhoods. These are the unsung heroes of Sweden's crisis. They are fighting a war that most people do not see, a war for the souls of the next generation. They are winning some battles, even as the war rages on. The capture of Rawa Majid would be a major victory. It would send a message that no one is above the law, that even the most powerful criminals can be brought to justice. But it would not end the war. The networks he built are too deep, too entrenched. The conditions that created him still exist. The fight must continue on multiple fronts: law enforcement, social investment, education, community building. It is a long war, and there are no quick victories. The involvement of the military is a dramatic step, but it is also a recognition of reality. The police cannot do this alone. The gangs are too well armed, too organized, too ruthless. The military can provide a temporary deterrent, a show of force that might give the authorities breathing room to implement longer-term solutions. But the military cannot fix the underlying problems. Only society can do that. The political debate will continue. There will be accusations and counter-accusations, blame and recrimination. The left will blame inequality and cuts to social programs. The right will blame failed integration and soft justice. Both sides have valid points, but neither has a monopoly on the truth. The crisis is too complex for simple answers. It requires a national conversation, a collective effort, a willingness to listen to those who have been silenced for too long. The families of the victims deserve to be heard. They have suffered the most, and their voices are often drowned out by the noise of political debate. They need to know that their loved ones mattered. They need to see that their loss has meaning. They need to believe that something good can come from the tragedy that has befallen them. It is a lot to ask, but it is the least we owe them. The children growing up in the vulnerable suburbs need to see a future for themselves. They need to believe that the system is on their side, that the state cares about them, that their lives matter. Without that belief, they will continue to be recruited. They will continue to become soldiers in a war they do not understand. They will continue to die, or to kill, or to go to prison. The cycle will continue. The story of Rawa Majid is a tragedy, but it is not over. The final chapter has not yet been written. The fox is still out there, somewhere running, hiding, plotting. The hunters are still hunting, and the families are still waiting for justice. The outcome is uncertain. But one thing is clear. The legacy of the Kurdish Fox will be felt for generations. In the families he shattered, in the communities he terrorized, in the nation he helped to destabilize. His name will be remembered, whispered in fear and anger, long after he is gone. The question is what comes next. Will Sweden learn from its mistakes? Will it invest in the future? Will it rebuild the trust that has been broken? Will it create a society where no child feels the need to join a gang? These are the questions that will determine the nation's fate. They are not easy questions, they have no simple answers, but they must be asked, they must be answered. The future of Sweden depends on it. As the sun sets over Stockholm, the city glitters with the promise of a new day. But in the shadows, the violence continues. The gangs fight, the bombs explode, the bodies fall, and the fox, wherever he is, watches. He watches the chaos he helped create. He watches the suffering he caused, and he feels nothing, because that is the nature of the beast. But the beast can be caged. The hunters are relentless, the families are resilient, the nation is determined, and one day, perhaps soon, the fox will be brought to ground. One day, justice will be done. One day, the long nightmare will end. Until then, the story continues, the fight continues, and we will be here, telling the stories, bearing witness, remembering the victims, and demanding justice. Because that is what we do, that is who we are. And that is the only way to ensure that the legacy of the Kurdish Fox is not one of terror, but of triumph. Triumph over evil, triumph over violence, triumph over the darkness that threatens to consume us all. The story of Rawa Majid is a warning to every nation that believes itself immune to the kind of lawlessness that has taken root in Sweden. A warning that the conditions that create criminals exist everywhere. A warning that we must remain vigilant, compassionate, and just, because the alternative is unthinkable. How do you think this escalating spiral of violence will be resolved? Do you believe that capturing Rawa Majid will make a difference? Or is the problem too deep, too systemic for any one arrest to matter? Would you like to know more about the other gangs fighting for control in Sweden? About the young soldiers who carry out the hits? About the families left behind? Or perhaps there is another country, another criminal, another story you want us to explore. The world of organized crime is vast, and the stories are endless. Let us know what you think. The conversation continues, and together we can shine a light into the darkness.